I always like to start off with something funny, because it kind of gets everybody in a good mood, you know. But I Googled persecution and jokes, and nothing came up. I'm sorry, there's just nothing funny about being persecuted, is it? It really is not. It's really not. It's not a laughing matter. It's not something we, you know, but it's part of the beatitudes. So we're going to have to go there. We're finishing up the beatitudes, right? We've been there for several weeks, a long time. Most of you have been here each week, and you've learned with me as we've gone through them that the beatitudes kind of just find more about who we are, right, than what we're supposed to do. There are some that tell us things to do, but it defines who we are and our relationship with God. It kind of touches on that we're all what? Sinners, right? And we're all kind of broken. And that our sin not only affects us, it affects our relationship with God, it affects our relationship with other people, and our relationship with the world. And that our sin is something that we should be sad about. The effects that it has not only on our relationships, but our relationship with God, but our relationship with other people, right? And it's something that we're a work in progress, right? Aren't we? Aren't we all a work in progress? We're trying to get better. We're not perfect. There ain't no perfect people here. The road's empty. I mean, it's obvious. There's no perfect people here. We're all just working to get better, right? We're working to get drawn closer to God. We want to do whatever it is that we need to do to bring us into that closer relationship with God. And part of that is what? And one thing that it does tell us to do is to show what? Mercy, right? It's that boomerang thing. We throw it out, we get it back. If you want mercy, you need to show mercy, right? That's who we're called to be. And we're called to be peacemakers. In other words, we're not the ones supposed to be stirring the conflict up. We're the ones supposed to be the ones that are looking for resolution, right? To right relationships. Relationships with other people and relationships with God. Whew, that's a lot of stuff. Simple stuff, really. It's simple. It's not complicated. It's written in an easy language. It's not easy, is it? It's not easy to be the person that God wants us to be. It takes a little bit of work, doesn't it? Right? We all agree. It takes a little bit of work, a little bit of effort, a little bit of time, a little bit of a commitment. Right? It's not just showing up on Sundays. God wants more than 2 hours. He didn't put a whole week out there for you to give him 2 hours, right? But today he puts the exclamation point on the beatitude. He tells us, not only do I need you to do this or be this person, but you're going to be persecuted. Well, just sign me up, right? Because that's what I want. That's what I want to sign up to be persecuted, right? Right? Everybody? Right? No? What? No volunteers? Come on. Somebody out there wants to be persecuted. Right? Somebody wants to be picked on, talked about, slapped around. No? I'm the only one? Wow. It tells us that's what it takes. It tells us if you're going to be a Christian, life's not always going to be, as my daughter says, clowns and cotton candy. It's going to be rough sometimes, right? Right? There's going to be some bumps in the road. That's why that song was so appropriate right here. I like that. Because God is the God of the day and the night, the mountains and the valley. Right? He's there in good times and bad times. And you don't need to forget that when you're out there and you're getting persecuted. Right? But it's because it tells us persecution is not a maybe. It's not if you get persecuted. There's a good chance you're going to get persecuted. And in this country, we're kind of free, aren't we, to worship? At least at this point in time. Nothing's changed. We're probably one of the freer countries to gather and worship, in reality. I don't sit here worried about stormtroopers coming through that door and arresting me or arresting you for being here to worship, right? We're here to worship. But persecution does go on. It does go on throughout the world, and it's good that we recognize that and we realize that we're blessed. We truly are blessed to live in this country. It's a great country. It may have its faults. It's not perfect. But neither are we, because it's made up of people just like me and you. That's why it's not perfect. We all got our faults, and all those faults together make for an imperfect country, but it's a great country. It's a great country. We don't need to forget that we do great things, and that we are blessed with many freedoms that you don't see around the world. Now, as we look at persecution, it happened from the early days, right? You realize that, right? When the church has never really not been persecuted at any point in history that I can recall. There's always been persecution somewhere. Because when you say things and when you live as a Christian, if we're to live as Christians, we're called to be, as Pam showed us on that jar, in the world, but not like the world, right? We're called to be separate. And if you're separate and you act like Christ, it's going to make some people feel uncomfortable. Let's be real. When you act different from somebody else, it makes them uncomfortable. When somebody acts different than you, it makes you uncomfortable. If somebody walked in here in a clown outfit and sat down, you might be a little uncomfortable, wouldn't you? You're like, what? What's going on? Because when people are different, we feel uncomfortable. And if we feel uncomfortable, they feel uncomfortable being around us because they're living in the flesh and we're living spiritually, because that's what we're called to do, right? By these spiritual commands that God has given us. And so when we do that, they're going to feel uncomfortable. And they're probably going to persecute you, at least at some level. Maybe small. And maybe you don't get invited to a party because they're afraid that you'll judge them. Or you don't get invited to go out to dinner with the boys because later on they're planning on going to the strip club and they know you wouldn't approve, so they don't invite you. Okay. Well, that's a small thing. But what I'm saying is you're singled out, right? You're not treated equally. You're not treated the same, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. And I hope you are. But Christ tells us you're going to be persecuted, and that's small. Because let me explain to you that when Christ left this earth, he left 12 disciples, handful of followers, and in the first 50 years of the church, they were able to go out and multiply that to almost 500,000 people. Now you have to keep something in mind here. There was no Christian radio, there was no TV, there was no internet, there was no newspapers. This is preaching. They get out there and they preach the word. Day after day after day. And 500,000 people came to Christ over the first 50 years. That's a lot of people in those times. That's covering a lot of area. But they paid a very high price for that. And a lot of times we like to talk about their successes and how well they did. But a lot of times we don't want to hear about how their lives ended up. So I thought it might be interesting. Let's just go over the 12 original disciples. What happened to them? How did their life go? They were heroes, right? Parades, usually parades, right? No. Let me tell you how they ended up. John was a lucky one. John was a lucky one. He died of old age, but he was exiled to the island of Patmos. Of course, we know Judas Iscariot. He hung himself after betraying Christ. Peter was crucified, head down, during the early years on the persecution during Nero's time, which is a really rough time for Christians, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Andrew, he died on a cross. James the younger, or the smaller, he was thrown off the pinnacle of the temple and then beaten to death with a club. Bartholomew was filleted alive. James, the elder son of Zebedee, he was beheaded in Jerusalem. Thomas the doubter, they ran a lance through his body. Philip was hanged. Thaddeus was shot to death with arrows. Simon died on a cross. And Matthew was stoned and then beheaded, because stoning wasn't enough. And then beheaded. Good times, right? No. Does that make any sense to you? What a commitment. What a commitment on those men's lives, that they were willing to give it all up, to suffer brutal deaths as well, to spread the gospel. They were persecuted for what they believed. Personally, I think that's one of the best arguments against people saying, well, Jesus wasn't real, he didn't rise from the dead. If he did, do you think those men would go to their deaths like that? Yeah, they could have just as easily renounced it and not been put through that. But you have to really believe something. You have to really, really believe something to be willing to be put to death for it. And especially in some of those brutal ways. You got to believe it deep down. Right? You got to be 100% committed. They were 100% committed. And they changed the world. And they changed the world not by preaching what people wanted to hear. They changed the world by preaching what people needed to hear. You see, not that watered down stuff that sometimes you hear on TV and stuff. You know, you've seen it. You know, where they're preaching a fluency, you know, name it and claim it. You can have it all. You know, they preach. And I'm not saying that you can't. Some of that's not legitimate. What I'm saying is it's a watered down gospel because you're only preaching a little bit of the gospel. You're not preaching, you know, that we need to be kind. You're not preaching love. You're not preaching the things that Jesus taught. Right? But the pastors are celebrities. Right? You got big churches. Money flows in. I guess it's got some purpose to it. And by the way, in case you're wondering, I'm not a celebrity. Although I've been told I look like a movie star. You might have seen my body double, Shrek. You seen that? Yeah, we look a lot like that. I'm more of the servant. I'm here to serve God. I'm here to preach the gospel, and if it steps on your toes, well, I'm sorry. I don't mean to step on your toes, but you might want to invest in some steel-toed boots if that's the lifestyle that you want to lead. Because sometimes words go against the grain, don't they? Sometimes we have to step out there and go counter to what culture tells us, what the world tells us is okay. We have to step out there and say, you know, that might be good for you in the world, but that's not what the Bible tells me I should be doing. That's not what the Bible tells me how I should be. You know? People say, you know, you got to get revenge. Someone hits you, hit them hard, hit them back. You know, that's not what the Bible tells you to do. The Bible tells you to forgive. And when you live that kind of life, it's going to draw attention to you. What's wrong? Aren't you going to die? You want me to hit him? I'll go hit him for you. You want me to hit him? No. But that's a good thing that it draws attention to you that you're different. Isn't it? Because it's your witness. Some of us don't have words. Some of us aren't word people. Some of us can't talk in front of people, and I can't either. And some of us can't write. But some of us, all of us, can act out the life of Christ in our lives. We can be good to people. We can be a loving people. We can be a forgiving people. We can mirror the things that Christ has told us. All of us can do that. All of us can preach the gospel through our actions. You don't have to be somebody who's gifted with words or has the gall to stand up here and preach to you. Right? You don't have to be that guy. We're all capable of spreading the gospel. But know that it's going to come at a price. We have to be aware of that. That you will be persecuted. People don't like it when you try to step on their lifestyle. They don't like that. When you tell them that, you know, perhaps that's not the right way to be living your life. They don't want to hear that, do they? No. They don't. But they never have. They never have. Christians have been persecuted since the beginning of time. Back in the early Roman Empire, we've all heard the stories of the Colosseum, where Christians were brought in, they were fed to the lions. They were entertainment. The Christians were the TV of the time. People would gather to watch them get massacred. Sometimes they would put clothes of wild animals on them, skins of wild animals, tie onto it so that the dogs would think they were wild animals and let the dogs loose and they would tear them apart. I mean, it was brutal stuff. Sometimes they would just light them on fire so they could light up the darkness. Brings a new meaning when you say we're going to bring light to the world, right? Perhaps that's not the way you had thought about doing it, right? Our way's a little easier way. But what I'm telling you is it was brutal stuff. This stuff happened all the time. This wasn't a sometimes thing or maybe thing or something of fiction or fairy tale. This was real life. And people today are persecuted as well. You know, Pam was sharing about Ukraine, how they had to hide to go to church. You know, they assigned 3 people to preach in the Ukraine every Sunday. There's 3 different ministers assigned to get a sermon together to come and preach. Because they don't know which ones are going to be arrested that week. And they want to have somebody who will show up on Sunday and be able to preach. And if they all 3 make it through the week, they all 3 preach that Sunday. I just hope it's the 3rd Sunday where there's food, because that's a lot of preaching, ain't it? I said, I know what you're thinking, preacher, we can barely get through yours. I don't know if we can take 3 sermons. Stay awake without eating. But that's the kind of world we live in, where people persecute people. We're blessed. You know, the worst part of ours is we might be excluded from parties or looked down on or segregated out of our thing. That's really the worst thing. Nobody's gonna behead you here, or it'd be very rare if it happened. I'm not saying it can't happen. I guess it's a crazy world and anything can happen. But what I'm saying is we don't walk around under the threat of that. We don't say, well, I'm not going to say I'm a Christian because somebody's going to cut my head off, or I'm going to be burned alive, or I'm going to be made into a torch. It doesn't happen that way, does it? So our commitments, at best, is less than what it's been in the past. Back in those days when Nero was the emperor of the Roman Empire, or back, actually I think it was 155 AD, there was a man of God, Polycarp I think was his name, and he was taken to the Colosseum and they were going to, of course, execute him. He was an old man. And they tried to get him to renounce his belief in God. Just renounce. Just say that you don't believe. We'll have mercy on you. And he told him, he said, you know, I'm 86 years old, and I've served him all my life, but he's done no wrong to me. Why in the world would I renounce my king, my savior? And they said, you know, they threatened him with dogs, and they threatened to turn him on fire, and that they were torturing him, and we're going to light you, make you a human torch. And he said, you know, you threaten me with fire that burns for an hour, and in a little while will be quenched. He said, for you do not know the fire of judgment to come. The fire of eternal punishment reserved for the ungodly. Why do you delay? Bring me what you will. Now that's courage, isn't it? To know that you're about to be set on fire and to stick to your guns. To know that your life's about to end, but to say, hey, you can only do so much to this body. I mean, let's face it. All you can do is kill me. I mean, I'm not volunteering. I mean, all you really can do, I mean, it's the worst thing you can torture me, but ultimately the worst thing you can do is to end my life. And if you end my life, you can just sped up the process and I'll be with God today. I fear that not. I pray you don't. And if you don't fear that, if you don't fear the worst, then you should have no problem stepping out. Stepping out and being on fire for God. Not worry about being set on fire by somebody, but be on fire for God. Let other people know about that love that He's shown into your life. Let other people know about that forgiveness that He's put into your heart. How do you do that? You reflect that. We're like mirrors. God shines it into us, and we need to shine it back out to the world. Don't fear being persecuted. Fear not doing what God's asked you to do. And that's to spread the good news of the gospel. I know sometimes it feels like your feet's to the fire and things aren't going your way and that the world's against you. But I want to encourage you. Step out. Don't be fearful. Let others see that you are different. That you're in the world but not of the world. That God's called you and He's blessed you. He's got a mission for you. Go out there and be missionaries. Go out there and change the world as those before you have done. Be on fire for Christ. And all God's people said,
Amen.